My stepmother told me my father left me nothing. She showed everyone a will with her and her son as sole heirs. At the wake, her son said, "He forgot you a long time ago." I almost believed them, until I found my father's real will, buried in the lining of his old briefcase along with a letter that said, "I never expected anything from my dad. Not love, not money, not attention. He wasn't cruel or abusive, just distant. Quiet. He did the bare minimum after my mom died." She passed away from cancer when I was 15. I watched her die slowly in our small house in Louisville, Kentucky, and my dad just kind of shut down. He went to work. He paid bills. He fed me. But after she was gone, it was like he put himself in a shell and never came back out. We didn't talk about feelings. If I cried, he'd awkwardly pat me on the shoulder. If I got a good grade, he'd nod. "No, I'm proud of you." "No, how are you holding up?" I stopped expecting anything emotional and just learned how to take care of myself. By the time I graduated high school, I was barely home. I worked 2 part-time jobs, stayed with friends a lot. I knew I wasn't easy to live with either. I was angry, numb, probably a bit cold. But I still hoped he'd notice. He didn't. When I was 19, he told me he'd met someone. Her name was Denise. He said it casually, like he was mentioning a new coworker. "She works at the dentist's office near my work. We've been seeing each other." 3 months later, she moved in. I didn't like her from the start. She was loud, flashy, the type who laughed too hard and touched people too much. She wore strong perfume that made the whole house smell like chemicals. And she had a son, Travis, who was the exact opposite of me. Popular, cocky, played football at his high school across town. We never got along. Denise tried to act like we were family. She'd force dinners where she'd ask me invasive questions and then act offended when I didn't want to talk. My dad never stepped in. He just sat there, quiet, sipping his iced tea like it was all fine. The house stopped feeling like mine. So I left. I moved out at 20, got a studio apartment, and started building my life. I didn't cut my dad off, but we weren't close. We'd text every once in a while. I'd stop by for Christmas, maybe Father's Day. I noticed over time that even those invites came from Denise, not him. When I was 28, he died. It was sudden. Stroke. Massive. He was dead before they even got him to the hospital. Denise called me and left a voicemail. "Your father passed away this morning. I'm handling the arrangements." That was it. I showed up at the wake a few days later, held in this sleek, expensive funeral home I'd never even heard of. It was like a showroom. Glass walls, fancy couches, finger food on silver trays. There were slideshow pictures of him with Denise and Travis, vacations I didn't even know he took, birthdays, cookouts. Travis giving a speech at his high school graduation with my dad standing next to him, smiling. I felt like a ghost in the room. I tried to keep it together. People I didn't recognize came up and said, "You must be the daughter," like I was a forgotten piece of trivia. Denise barely looked at me. When I finally got a quiet moment with her and asked about the will, she gave me this tight-lipped smile. "He left everything to me and Travis," she said, like she was telling me the weather. There wasn't much. Just the house, his accounts. We're sorting it out now.
Ist sehr her.
He didn't leave me anything? She blinked like I was slow.
No, sweetheart.
He said you were doing fine on your own, that you didn't need anything. It hit me like a slap. All I could manage was, "That doesn't sound like him." She just shrugged.
Well,
it's what he decided. Later, Travis cornered me near the front door. He was holding a glass of wine like he was celebrating something. "You know," he said, leaning in with this smug smile, "he forgot you a long time ago." I clenched my fists. Go to hell. He laughed and walked off. That night, I sat in my apartment trying to convince myself I was fine. That it didn't matter. That I didn't need anything from him anyway. But something wouldn't sit right. My dad wasn't warm, but he wasn't cruel. He wouldn't cut me out completely. Not without a word. I remembered his old briefcase. He used to carry it everywhere, dark brown leather, worn down on the corners. I hadn't seen it in years. After Denise moved in, a lot of his old stuff just disappeared. I called and asked if I could pick up some of my mom's things from the garage. Denise hesitated, but said fine. I went the next day. She barely looked up from her phone when I came in. I dug through the boxes in the garage until I found it, shoved behind a plastic bin of Halloween decorations. It was dusty, heavier than I remembered. I brought it home. That night, I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were old receipts, faded papers, and a photo of me as a kid. But when I picked it up to move it, I felt something shift inside the lining. The fabric was loose. I tore it open and found two things: a folded legal document and a letter. The will was clear. Signed 5 years ago. Notarized. It left everything to me. Not Denise. Not Travis. Everything. The letter was short. My dad's handwriting. If you're reading this, then they've already tried to erase you. But I never did. I've made mistakes, especially by letting people in who didn't deserve to be. This will is the real one. The other one, if it shows up, was never meant to exist. Get a lawyer. Fight for what's yours. I'm sorry I didn't tell you this in person. I thought I had more time. I stared at the paper all night. Cried harder than I had in years. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there with that letter in one hand and the real will in the other, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. My hands were shaking, and my stomach felt like it was full of acid. My dad hadn't forgotten me. He'd planned for me. He just never told me out loud. Maybe he was scared. Or maybe he waited too long. I called off work the next day. I made copies of the will and the letter and took the originals to a small fireproof box I'd had since college. Then I called a lawyer. I found one downtown, small firm, nothing flashy. Her name was Angela. I told her everything about the fake will, Denise, Travis, the briefcase, the letter. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "If your copy is real and valid, then someone committed fraud." I asked her what would happen if we proved it. She said, "If the other will came after this one, it could override it. But if it came before or is fake altogether, and especially if your father was coerced or mentally unfit when he signed anything else, then you have a real case. We just have to find out when that other will was made and who notarized it." So we started digging. Angela filed a petition in probate court to submit the real will. That triggered an automatic freeze on any transfers Denise was trying to make with my father's estate. Within a week, I got a call from her office. "Denise got served," Angela said. "And she hired a lawyer." That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was what happened next. 2 days after that call, I came home from work and found my front door wide open. Nothing was stolen, but my apartment had clearly been gone through. Drawers pulled open. Files dumped. Even the couch cushions were slashed. I don't own anything valuable. I knew exactly what they were looking for. I called the cops. They took a report, asked if I had enemies. I said I was in a legal fight with my stepmother over my dad's will. One of the officers looked at me and said, "You think she did this?" I said, "I don't think. I know." Angela had me move the originals of the will and the letter to a secure location. We handed them over to her firm's custody, sealed in an envelope, stored in their legal vault. The court scheduled a hearing. Meanwhile, Denise went on the offensive. She started calling people, family friends, church folks, even my dad's old co-workers, and telling them I was trying to take her house. She told people my dad had written me off years ago, that I was ungrateful, that I never visited him, that I was trying to punish her for being the only one who ever stood by him. One of my aunts actually called me and asked, "Is it true you forged a will?" That nearly broke me. I realized then how much power Denise had built up in his final years. She controlled his social life, his finances, his narrative. Most people believed her, but not all of them. One of my dad's old co-workers, Dan, who used to go fishing with him, called me quietly one evening. He said, "Your dad told me a few years back he was changing the will. Said he needed to make it right with you. Said Denise wouldn't like it, but it was his decision. I asked him if he'd testify. He said yes. Then things got worse. Angela subpoenaed the will Denise submitted to the court. When it came back, the date on it was 8 years ago, older than mine. But it was notarized, which meant if it was legit and we could prove mine was newer and valid, we'd win. But the notary was a friend of Denise's. Angela dug into the notary's records and found out something big. The woman had lost her license 3 months before that signature date. She wasn't legally allowed to notarize anything. That made Denise's will invalid. We had proof of fraud. Then Angela found something else. Bank records. Just weeks before my dad died, over $40,000 had been transferred out of his personal savings account into a joint account with Denise's name on it. None of that had been disclosed in probate filings. When we confronted her lawyer, he tried to argue it was a gift. Angela said fine. We'd let a judge decide. Then Travis showed up at my job. I was working the front desk at a local dental office. He walked in without an appointment, stood at the counter, and leaned in. "You need to stop," he said. "You're tearing this family apart." I stood up. "You mean your family?" He sneered. "You think this is going to make him love you now?"
He's dead.
"He didn't want you." I said nothing. Just stared at him until my boss came out and told him to leave or she'd call security. I reported the incident. Angela filed a restraining order. This wasn't just a legal fight anymore. It was a war. I started losing sleep. I stopped answering my phone. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. Denise had money, connections, and a story she'd been spinning for years. But I had the truth. And I wasn't going to stop. 3 weeks before the court date, I got a call from Angela that changed everything.
"We got a letter," she said.
Anonymous. Mailed to our office. It was a plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from right here in Louisville. Inside was a typed note. "Check the safe deposit box at First National Bank." Under Russell's name. She doesn't know it exists. Angela moved fast. She filed an emergency motion with the court to access the safe deposit box. It took 2 days to get a judge to sign off on it. I went with her and a court clerk to the bank. My hands were shaking the whole time. The manager pulled out the box and set it on the table in a little gray room in the back. He unlocked it with a key the court had issued and stepped out. Inside were 4 things. 1. A stack of handwritten journals, my dad's handwriting. 2. A manila envelope labeled, "In case something happens to me." 3. A USB drive.
4.
A photo of me and my dad from when I was 10, him holding me up on his shoulders, both of us smiling. Angela picked up the envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten affidavit. A sworn statement from my dad, dated 6 months before he died. I have reason to believe my wife, Denise, and her son Travis are attempting to manipulate my estate and isolate me from my daughter. I have revised my will and stored it separately. I have told no one of its location. I do not trust the people around me. There was more. The affidavit listed financial withdrawals Denise had made, without his knowledge, several $1,000s at a time. It also included names, the same notary who signed her version of the will, and another one, someone named Hal Miller. Angela raised her eyes. "Hal Miller was a friend of your dad's." I saw his name on some older documents. We tracked Hal down. He was in assisted living now, but still mentally sharp. When Angela asked him if he remembered anything about my dad's will, he nodded immediately. "Russell brought me a document to witness and notarize," he said. Said it was the only real one. Said he didn't trust Denise anymore. That lined up with everything. The journals, the affidavit, the witness statement. But the real shock was on the USB drive. It held audio files. Recordings. My dad had started secretly recording conversations in his home. The files were raw. Scratchy, like they were made on an old recorder. But the voices were clear. In one, Denise said, "If she ever shows up again, I'll make sure she doesn't get a dime. You said she was out of your life. Keep it that way." In another, Travis's voice, "We don't need her sniffing around. Just sign the damn paper, and I'll take care of the rest." The most damning one was my dad's voice. Quiet, tired. I already made a new will. She's my daughter. You're not stealing this from her. Angela sat back in her chair. They're done. We submitted everything to the court. But there was one more twist. Denise tried to settle. Her lawyer reached out with an offer. $100,000 cash, the car, and an agreement that I wouldn't pursue criminal charges or take the house. Angela asked me what I wanted to do. I said no. This wasn't about money anymore. They'd broken into my home, slandered me, tried to erase me from my own father's life. Letting them walk away with anything would be letting them win. Angela looked at me and said, "Then we go to trial." The courtroom was packed the day the trial started. It wasn't some big headline case, but enough people had heard the rumors, family, neighbors, friends of my dad's. People who'd taken Denise's side were there, pretending to be neutral. Some didn't even make eye contact with me. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Angela, my hands sweating through the folder of notes I barely looked at. Denise wore all black again, like it was still the funeral. Travis sat behind her, arms crossed, smug as ever. Their lawyer looked polished and bored, like he thought this would be over in a day. Then we started. Angela laid it all out. The Real will, the letter in the briefcase, the safe deposit box, the affidavit, the journals, the audio files. Every time she introduced another piece of evidence, Denise shifted in her seat. Her lawyer kept objecting. The judge allowed almost all of it. Hal Miller testified. Clear, calm, and honest. I notarized the real will. Russell was of sound mind. He told me Denise was trying to control him. Dan, my dad's coworker, took the stand next. He told me he'd changed the will, said he owed it to his daughter. Then Angela played the audio files. The whole courtroom went silent. You could hear Denise's voice. Cold. Calculating. Just sign the damn paper. Travis's voice. She's out. That's final. And my father, quiet but firm. She's my daughter. Denise looked pale. Travis looked down. Then came my turn. Angela told me I didn't have to speak. But I wanted to. I stood and told the judge everything. About growing up with a dad who didn't know how to show love. About Denise taking over. About being pushed out of my own family. About finding the letter in that old briefcase. He may not have said it out loud, I said, my voice cracking, but he didn't forget me. He never forgot me. Denise's lawyer tried to argue fraud. He said I forged the documents, that the audio was edited, that I manipulated an old man. Then Angela pulled out the last card. The notary who signed Denise's fake will? She'd flipped. Angela found her after the recordings came out. She confessed. Swore in an affidavit that Denise pressured her to sign it, even though her license had lapsed. I didn't want to, the statement read. But Denise said it was just a formality. I regret it now. That was it. The judge ruled in my favor. The real will was upheld. Denise's was declared invalid and fraudulent. I was named the legal heir to my father's estate. But it didn't end there. Angela filed criminal charges, fraud, perjury, attempted theft. The judge referred the case to the county prosecutor. Denise was arrested 3 weeks later. Travis, too, for conspiracy. It made the local news. Suddenly, all those people who'd believed her stopped answering her calls. She lost everything. My dad's house, his accounts, her reputation. Her friends turned their backs. The church asked her not to return. Travis got expelled from the community college he was attending. Turns out, he was using some of my dad's money to pay tuition. He got a misdemeanor conviction. Denise got probation and a felony record. And me? I stood in the empty house a month later. My dad's house.
My house now.
I didn't cry. I just walked through every room, touching the walls, the light switches, the old creaky floorboards. I found more photos tucked away, of me, of my mom, even of my dad alone. Like pieces of him he'd hidden. I didn't forgive him for everything. He should have stood up to her. He should have told me what was happening. But he tried to make it right. And I fought to make sure it counted. I sold the house. Not because I didn't want it, but because I needed a fresh start. I used the money to buy a small home in the Highlands, where I always wanted to live. I quit the dental job and went back to school to finish my degree. Sometimes, I still hear Travis's words at the wake. He forgot you a long time ago. He was wrong. He remembered me in the end. And I made damn sure no one would ever forget that.